Great, very good.
All right, let's do it. Good evening, everyone. I'll call this meeting of the CB2 Land Use and Housing Committee to order. First of all, I want to welcome some of our new committee members. I think we have four new people. We have Melissa, Bill, Leo, and Kevin. Why don't we do some quick introductions for our new folks? So, Melissa, I'll start with you. You want to
Hi,
introduce yourself to the
everyone.
committee?
It's great to see you all. Great to see you all as well. Thank you so much for the opportunity to participate and learn from all of you. I'm born and raised in Queens. I'm an educator, a teacher, and an assistant principal in New York City public schools and middle school. And I have two young girls, one of whom goes to school in elementary school here in PS 150 in Sunnyside. One who is going to be 7 next week, and the other one who is 2.5. And just really grateful for this time together. So thank you. Welcome.
Welcome. Bill, let's go to you next.
Yes, thank you, Pramit. Bill Murray here, also from Queens, born and raised. I've lived here my whole life, though in different neighborhoods of Queens. I'm a Sunnyside resident within CV2. I live on 46th Street and almost Queens Boulevard, right where that T-Mobile store is, if anyone's familiar. Yeah, my education is in environmental science, mainly a science background. I worked at the city council for years, and now I work at a place called the American Council of Engineering Companies. So I'm surrounded by kind of technical people all day, professional engineers, and just really excited to kind of jump into land use. I actually have things to learn on land use. So I will be listening a lot. Yeah, so thank you for having me.
Leo, let's go to you.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. Nice to see you all. Yeah, I'm Leo Gutman. I've lived in the district the last few years, grew up in Rochester, and then spent years on the West Coast after college and came back. And then, yeah, with Long Island City. Yeah, professionally, software engineer. So this is not like aren't like professional reason to know all this, but excited to learn creating land use and get to work with everyone here.
Awesome. And then Kevin, why don't you close us out?
Great. Hi, everyone. Kevin Davis. I live in Long Island City. I've been there for 17 years. I've been in New York for around 30. Lisa asked me before where I'm really from. And believe it or not, I was born in Kentucky. So I may be the only one here at the table, but I am a New Yorker. There's no question about it at this point. Trained as an architect. I went to graduate school here in New York City, and I have worked in various parts of the field. At the moment, I'm mostly focused on building decarbonization. So there's a sustainability side to my work at this point. And I'm also doing some teaching on sustainability related to building reason kind of stuff. So I also got how I ended up here ultimately. I became, just as a community member, a resident, really involved in One LIC, and became one of those people at every meeting with things with the tax and with the post-its. So it was a real experience understanding how things work or don't, and led me to here. So glad to be here.
Great. I am super happy to have you all involved and really appreciate your willingness to contribute your time to our committee and your expertise to our work. So looking forward to working with you all. I also want to apologize for not being there in person tonight. I love being at these meetings in person, but as some of you know, my wife and I have been dealing with some health issues involving our newborn daughter. She was recently hospitalized for a week and is soon going to need a heart surgery, unfortunately. So the last few weeks have been a little bit chaotic. And that's also part of the reason why I haven't made as much progress recently on some of the longer term organizational goals and follow-up items that we've been discussing as I would have liked. But thankfully, things are stabilizing, and I'm hopeful that I'll have more time to devote to this over the summer once the surgery is done. And while that's been happening, I want to thank Tanya in particular for doing an enormous amount of work to keep things moving while I've been less available for the last few weeks. So thank you, Tanya, for keeping it going. But all that being said, we have a fairly full agenda tonight. We have a mix of ongoing ULURP tracking, some broader policy discussions, and then some of those organizational items related to our committee's capacity and long-term planning work. And a lot of what we're discussing reflects the increasing pace and complexity of land use activity in our district. So some of these items tonight are going to be informational, some are exploratory, and some are going to help us position our committee for what's likely going to be a pretty active fall for us. So this meeting is really going to set the stage for the next few ones. So thank you all again for being here. And why don't we get started with our first agenda item? This is a presentation on a proposed zoning text amendment regarding public bathrooms. And I know, Christine, you were spearheading this and Julie couldn't make it. But I'll let you lead this conversation with the information that we do have available. And from what I understand, this is a part of a broader citywide conversation around expanding access to safe, accessible, well-maintained public restroom facilities, including potentially through zoning incentives or public-private partnerships. So, Christine, you've been helping coordinate this discussion. Do you want to introduce the item and provide some background on the initiative?
Proposed amendment, text amendment is actually a little, is actually jumping the gun. We're not, city planning is not at that stage. But Board 5, and so just kind of set the stage, the issue of public toilets has been or lack of public toilets throughout New York City has been a huge issue, which there's some very dedicated people working on. It's a very unsexy issue, and it's one where developers and everybody really resists, even though everybody agrees we need them, and it's hugely lacking. But so right now, just above a certain size, I believe that public toilets are required infrastructure in new parks or parks undergoing renovation, public parks. But they are not required infrastructure in what's the shorthand is POPs, which is privately owned public spaces. And those kind of got their start in Manhattan in commercial areas. And I'm sure some of you are familiar with there's a long history there too, Vest Pocket Parks, and then there's some indoor POPs and some outdoor POPs. But there are no requirements still specifically to include public toilets in those. And then just, I think where our concern really needs to be is for LIC, for the one LIC area, most of the public space off the waterfront that was proposed or shown by the city is these private spaces. And these private spaces I think we really have to educate ourselves about the requirements, the current language requirements for these privately owned public spaces, which are different in the sense from the ones in Manhattan, in the sense that they're more, they're in buildings that are going to be largely residential. But the upshot is that without clear requirements, currently there's not a mandate to include public toilets in any of these spaces, and there's already a huge deficit. I think especially around Port Square. I was just talking to somebody who lived there. So I think that this board should get really should approach city planning, should try and understand what the current, how far along city planning is in having any specific regulations for these proposed privately owned spaces that are going to give people places to breathe and kids places to go outdoors in Long Island City, where they are with their regs, what, if any regs there currently are, what's in the zoning. And I mean, my suggestion would be to try and strike while the iron's hot with this new administration in city planning and jump in and at least declare our concern and our interest in our priority. And now what's happening in Manhattan is that the boards have been working together around the language, and I think CB5 Manhattan, which is Midtown East, I guess, and includes the Garment District, has been really taking the lead in pushing this issue and pushing for new language in new zoning language in the POPs requirements to mandate public toilets and or publicly accessible toilets. And they're trying to really act together as a borough and maybe come up with some borough action or borough mandate, which is great. And I'm sure they'd be glad to have our support. And the truth is, I think that especially Board 2, but also Board 1, the pace of development and the density of development and the kind of sophistication of the development is really giving our boards much more in common with the concerns of the Manhattan boards than with some of the boards further out in Queens. But we kind of have to educate ourselves and get on that bandwagon. So that's the current status, is that CB5, especially but the Manhattan boards together, are working with some of their electeds and with city planning, in conversation with city planning, to try and modify and strengthen the POPs requirements there. And I have and they were kind of sent this. I have a friend who lives in Long Island City, but has been on Board 5 for a long time. She's an architect. She's been very active around this issue. So she kind of included me on this email. They're looking for support. And I have no objection to our supporting them, but I also think that we need to kind of initiate discussion with our city planning routes about the whole issue. And it isn't just POPs, but it isn't just toilets. It's sort of, what are these public spaces what are the requirements for these public spaces? So Julie had sent me, and we could bring up a presentation from January by their land use consultant, which just includes some facts and stuff about public toilets and how many of them are in publicly owned areas, how many of them are in privately owned areas. And we could play the first few minutes of that if people want. And then I think we should just strategize about how we want to proceed, but I definitely recommend.
Thank you.
Reaching out to city planning, to our city planning reps, try and engage them. I don't know how much they know. City planning does kind of operate borough by borough. And then kind of deciding what next actions are appropriate for us to take. Other thoughts on that? Or do people want to see the first couple minutes? This zoning consultant is George James, excuse me, is one of the people that we're considering, that one of the names that's been brought up as a potential consultant for us. So this is just kind of an introduction. But
let's see if the tech works enough for us to be able to stream it live right now. If it does, great, we can watch a few minutes. But if not, then maybe we can give people homework to watch some of this video at home.
Okay, that's fine. Either one. I didn't realize it'd be a problem.
The rule for parks applies to state.
Raphael, I'll let you, I don't know if you can figure it out. I'll give you a minute to try. If not, we'll move on.
Great, sounds good.
And then while you're trying, I can just summarize some of the materials that Christine sent. So it looks like Manhattan CB5 has already passed a formal resolution supporting the exploration of zoning text amendments related to public bathroom access. And they've apparently repeatedly pushed for public bathrooms through POPs applications and zoning actions dating as far back as 2019. So this has been something they've been considering for a while. According to the numbers,
had a lot of success.
Yeah. According to the numbers, apparently New York has about 1,066 public restroom citywide, but only 14 are located in POPs. So pretty low contribution. Queens has 0 POPs-based public restrooms. So we are definitely lagging. And then the other theme that they talk about in the materials is that zoning already requires certain amenities for these POPs, like seating, fountains, lighting, landscaping. food service sometimes, but not bathrooms. So it wouldn't be that difficult in terms of a zoning approach to add these bathrooms. The presentation summarizes sort of 6 possible zoning approaches that they could take. One is to make bathrooms count as an additional amenity. Another is to tie bathrooms to food service pops. You could just require bathrooms and pops altogether. You could offer a bonus FAR for providing bathrooms. You can create a standalone restroom bonus, or you can model it after the subway improvement bonus program. So lots of different options for this. And I think Christine's right. I think we're, in an information sort of gathering and discussion phase right now. So Fagla is out today, but in one of our future meetings, Raphael, let's take this as an action item. Let's ask her to have a POPs focus discussion and for
Yeah.
her to bring in someone who's an expert in POPs so we can have this sort of conversation with them.
And I don't even know if they're using the term pops for the spaces that they're assuming are gonna be developed out of the bonus provisions in the one LIC language, because I don't think that term is used in the zoning language, but that's definitely essentially what they are.
Yeah. Yeah, I always thought that like, that the way that POPs is being used in that rezoning is, as basically a substitute for public open space.
Yeah.
Requires a kind of different set of zoning guidelines than what you might see when an office building gets developed in Manhattan that provides like interior public opens. Private.
Right.
public space.
Especially if it's 3 blocks from Central Park.
Right.
That's what you-
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, just in terms of like hours of operation and. I mean, the other thing is like separate from the amenities that go into them is just that it seems like. There's a kind of enforcement issue with them. Right, like the city, I guess it's. Who's in charge of it? I guess it's. What, planning? Or like in terms of making sure that they're. Cause I've just seen them fenced off and not, like there's a public open space in front of an office building, but you can't actually go into it. Or over time, they kind of like modify them and they're not really what they were originally intended to be and
In the private spaces.
in the
I mean.
privately owned.
Right.
Pops.
I mean, even in parks, I think, so. In my view, I don't know if everyone's familiar with it, the greatest bathroom in New York City is the one in Bryant Park.
Mhm.
They play music and but I think that is the bid, right, or the bid or the Parks Conservancy, I don't know which, that's basically paying someone to manage it. But that's not, I mean, so definitely they take management, they take personnel. In some cases they take regular staff, but that, I don't think we should give up because of it.
What is the area, I work in Hudson Yards, what's that, like the area where the vessel is and that it's like public space? Is that a pop or is that like just the mall made space or the vessel or whatever?
There's the same
Because-
part of the, that's in nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah, so-
But is it-
property.
Right,
But
but
is
it's
it-
private
is
security.
But is it-
that categorized
it's
as a
essentially a-
park?
I mean, it's not a park like I like a park, but it is outdoor space where you can sit and do stuff. And I actually don't know.
Christine?
that.
I can
Yes.
screen share now and show the presentation.
Okay, let's see.
Enough bathrooms, so I'm guessing they
Yeah, they
feel like
just-
the mall
right.
is part of the
And
service.
it's true that most of the people there are either in a hotel, apartment or walk there, so it's not needed, but it's just, I do wonder, cause. Like I'm also like, who's for that?
Well, I leave it up to Prameet. Prameet, Raphael says,
I can screen share and then the presentation that Christine sent us. If you'd like.
Why don't we just circulate the link? I think it'll be easier if people just watch it on their own. Because we can only do 5 minutes of it anyway. And I think it's a little bit longer. So
Agreed.
I just put it in the chat, and Raphael, why don't you follow up and recirculate it to everyone so it's in their email address,
Sure.
and we can just ask people to just watch it at their own leisure.
yeah,
Do we know anything about, like the CB5 Act 18 and building for new restrooms and their pops when 3 happened? Like, do we know what's different about those 3 or like any mechanism or is just
I don't know
operate on
about
those?
those. The only sort of anecdotally thing I know about CB2 here, and I forget that, what's the name of that ramps park that is being built, but next to the Lions building.
Those the rails.
Is that what it's actually called?
Oh, that's what
They, what they can call it.
That's- yeah.
you're on this one.
Oh,
Okay,
okay. That one.
when that, maybe, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, I think, when they first brought that to us. And we made comments about the programming and stuff. We also asked for a bathroom and they kind of hemmed and hawed. So there wasn't enough space in the area, but so we said, well, if you're gonna have a restaurant in the base of the building, could you make a bathroom in that building? Was probably what we said. Well, I really don't know where that ended up. It would kind of be a miracle if there is actually is gonna be something.
I imagine the bigger problem is not so much the space as much as the actual infrastructure. One of the city.
And I'm guessing probably allocated that correctly because when they were, I remember they passed some budget for a bathroom near Woodside area and it was like a huge amount. It was
Yeah, there's-
several
on the-
millions,
on the
so I'm forgetting.
There's been a whole mandate for these modular bathrooms that they're gonna be supposedly, I think there's some sitting in a warehouse somewhere, but
That's what the mayor wants, right, or the modular.
right, but those are kind of throughout the city, one in every community district and, I mean, that's all good, but that's not really gonna be adequate for the, you know.
Like,
extent-
Lauren has a hand online. Lauren?
No, I was just gonna say that I'm glad that the land use committee is exploring this. Public bathroom access has been an important issue for the Health and Human Services Committee.
Yeah.
Julie Chu has previously presented before us as well, and we had passed a resolution at some point about making the public bathroom access part of the permanent open restaurants program. So I'm really glad that we're, gonna try to do something about this through land use if possible.
Well, I
Lauren, can
think
you send
you
us
both- we should-
the
we-
resolution that you've already done?
Okay. And yeah, you can send whatever information I have in terms of what we've done with this. And one of the things I want to say that why it's important is that female brought up the fact that it's like how much of a need there is for public bathroom access, especially people who are like pregnant. You've got, seniors, people with kids and whatnot. And it's interesting because you sort of have to plan your itinerary when you go out sometimes, like where is there a public bathroom that that you can use. So, and it's also one of the things that happens, like when stores close, you start thinking, well, there's a loss now of a public bathroom. So I'm really glad that we'll be looking at this, but whatever I have, I will send and forward to land use.
And I think the two committees should work together, because
Yeah, I would love that. I would love that. We would love that because like I said, it's been very, very, very key issue for us as well.
Great.
Okay.
Great. All right, I'm gonna time box this discussion. Any last thoughts? Looks like Danielle has a hand.
One thing, Lauren, I'd like to talk about that, your resolution, because it's something we could add to our list when we're approving liquor license is for big spaces. Like, will you let people come in and use your bathroom? Not for the smaller places, but the big spaces. And I just will add that as someone who spends a lot of time canvassing for political candidates, like a public like you have to factor in where there are public bathrooms for campuses.
Yeah.
So.
All right, so I think we have some action items here. We're going to get the resolution that Lauren and the Health and Human Services Committee has done. We're going to watch the YouTube video and inform ourselves a little bit more, and then we're going to ask Fagala to bring in a Hops expert to a future meeting so we can keep talking about this. And then after all of that, and when we feel like we're in a good spot, I would imagine we're going to do a joint resolution with us and Health and Human Services, encouraging the city to do more bathrooms in our area. Cool.
Do you think we're gonna have a huge, I would invite Fagala to tell us in June, if that's.
I think our June agenda is going to be pretty packed, so let's take a look at it. If not, then we'll do it in September.
Okay.
Cool. All right, let's go next to DCP. So Fagala, like I said, can't make it today, but she did give us an email update on her action items, so I'll go through them right now. So the first thing that we always ask of her is just any updates on either Hunters Point or on the DOE RFP site, and she doesn't really have any. So at the moment, there's no substantive updates from DCP about the HPD Hunters Point parcels, though she did share with us contact information for HPD staff. So what we can do is reach out to HPD directly and ask if there is anything. I would imagine that they are not ready to share anything yet, but there's no harm in asking. And then similarly, there's no major updates at this time around the DOE RFP site. And she thinks that the expectation is that updates, if there are any, they're going to probably come in through something like the 1LIC oversight committee process as things move forward. And that's probably where we're going to hear a lot of the updates on things that were, part of the rezoning. There are 3 sites that are going to be sending land use applications to us coming up. The first 2 are related, 5001 Queens Boulevard and 5002 Queens Boulevard. So for 5001, they filed their land use application and it's currently undergoing environmental review. Certification is probably not expected until sometime during the summer recess period, potentially July or August, which would mean that we would review it in the fall. For 5002, DCP said that certification is probably going to occur around June 1st. So our review clock is potentially going to go from June 10th through early September, and it would be elongated again because of the summer break that we have. But for this one, assuming everything goes well, we're going to encourage the applicant to appear before our committee in June. And then the third one is 4417 Greenpoint Avenue. This is the Bliss Theater, former Jehovah's Witness Assembly Hall site that we've talked about a lot. So DCP said that certification for this site might occur around mid-June. And again, the ULURP clock would extend into September. But we know all about these folks. They've come before our committee in the past, so it'll be interesting to see what their final proposal is. And we're definitely going to invite them back for the June meeting if certification proceeds on schedule. Any comments or questions about those things?
I think we need to, just on past experience, we need to really look at our calendar, and I know they've somewhat extended our review periods because of the summer certification, but we have to really be sure that we actually have a chance based on our meeting schedule for land use to review it and then bring it to the board and then have a decision within, or let city planning know if we can't meet those deadlines. And then if we push hard enough, they will. I think.
Yeah, agreed. I think the way it's probably going to work is we're going to have these folks, if they certify in early June, come to our June meeting, and we'll have to take a land use committee position in June because the September board meeting is going to have to be when we do the board vote on these things. So we'll have to be prepared to make a quick recommendation, knowing that oftentimes we like having more information and going back and forth and asking questions. I think we'll probably have to make a recommendation in parallel to sort of asking them questions, and then hopefully we'll get responses over the summer, and then during the board meeting we can make personal edits to our position, but the committee resolution is going to have to stand.
Does anybody know what actually prevents DCP from delaying certification on a given project? We're always extending and trying to catch up. But what is the time clock that determines the actual certification?
I would imagine it's because DCP isn't going on summer break. It's just us. So whenever the applicant is ready and the certification sort of process plays out, they're going to certify. But what we probably could ask for in case the clock doesn't work out is, can we get a couple more weeks to align all of our meetings? And in the past, they've been amenable to that. They've never said they're going to reject our position if we're a little late. Just these past couple of months with all of the staffing transitions that we've had, we've been a little late in uploading some of our resolutions, and they've still taken them. So I think there is a little bit of wiggle room. It's not like they're gonna ignore anything we say if we don't get it in time. All right. The other thing I want to note here is, generally these timelines also reinforce why we've been discussing additional, planning and technical capacity for the committee. We're entering a period with, multiple overlapping land use applications and compressed review schedules. So it will in the future be helpful to have a consultant who can start working on this kind of stuff and sort of bring us up to speed on what we need to know a little bit quicker, so we're not so rushed right at the end.
So just to, since you brought that up, I might, to follow up, I'm in touch with, so there is an actual department in the city, with the CEC, I forget what it stands for, which is working on this particular area. And there is somebody actually for community boards to interface on the topic of, but the problem is, it was delayed quite a bit under the Adams administration. And it is a mandate in the charter to provide this kind of expertise, but there's no funding. And so that's kind of where that's at the moment, but I'm still, trying to kind of find my way to people who have, some that we might be able to influence.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, well, hey, keep at it, Kenny. Let's see what we can find there and hopefully get some help. Cool. All right, the next item we have on our agenda is a briefing from actually one of our new members, Bill, regarding ongoing city council discussions around building code reforms and small lot housing development. So as I understand it, this is still early stage policy work, but it touches on some broader questions around housing feasibility, distributed growth, barriers to smaller scale infill development throughout the city and our neighborhood. So Bill, thanks again for being willing to brief the committee. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Pramit, for the opportunity, and to Michael also, who's taken an active interest in this topic. So yeah, just to build on what you said, Pramit, this is the city council pursuing kind of a targeted legislative reforms to spur the creation of more residential housing on small lots. They issued an announcement about this, that they're going to be forming legislation. Just about 2 weeks ago, I put the press release in the chat there for anyone who is also very interested in this subject. So again, it's reforming construction codes, building codes to make it easier to build housing on small lots. So what they're talking about is lots that are 15 to 27 feet wide, where the council believes current code requirements are constraining additional housing supply that could be developed as of right. The council, they've convened a task force, which consists of architects and engineers and financial professionals and housing advocates. And they are trying to play with reforms to the code and how it would affect the financial viability of building more residential buildings on these lots. The council's preliminary analysis has found that about 35,000 new units of housing could be built on these lots. They believe there are about 2,850 such small lots that are currently either vacant or underbuilt across the 5 boroughs, including in Queens. Just looking through some notes here. The bills have not been introduced yet. So I don't know all the details, and there's like active conversations going on about the details. But when we are talking about this, it is widely understood that one of the big ideas in this space is what's called single stairway egress reform. And so I'll go into a little bit more detail on this concept. So in New York City, we're actually one of very few jurisdictions around the country, along with Seattle and Honolulu, I believe, Hawaii, that allows single staircase buildings that are over 3 stories tall. Currently in the city, a residential building that stands 4 stories tall only needs a single staircase as long as the square footage of the building doesn't exceed 2,500 square feet per story. And buildings up to 6 stories tall only require a single staircase so long as the square footage is under 2,000 square feet per story. So there's really a cap at 6 stories for single stair egress. And, you know, so under these existing code requirements, buildings that exceed these thresholds are generally required to provide 2 means of egress, 2 stairs, and other features like enclosed corridors that connect the stairwells, circulation space. And so, you know, on a typical Queens small lot or Brooklyn or Manhattan, these requirements consume floor area, you know, a disproportionate amount of floor area in these buildings, in fact. So that diminishes the rentable and sellable area within the building. It also decreases the apartment sizes in the building. And in many cases, you know, the types of professionals that do this sort of work tell us the math isn't mathing out. And so that is why they believe that by tweaking these thresholds, it could spur more 8-story buildings, and a lot of them. So, you know, one potential solution that's been kind of bandied about is to allow single stair egress for buildings that are up to 8 stories tall, up from the current cap of 6 stories, with a maximum floor plate of 4,000 square feet, up from the current 2,000 square feet cap. There are precedents for this in other countries where they do single stair buildings of this scale. Like in Germany, you know, Sweden, other countries, you know, if you do a little cursory research, you can find, although there's quirks to all the different, you know, ways jurisdictions are doing this. You know, the other half of this kind of debate that's happening is that this would need to be paired with adequate safety measures, fire safety measures. And that is kind of the big debate, I'd call it, you know, and I think the fire department will be weighing in on this with the city council, and there you have it. So it's really that is one idea that's part of this code reform initiative. 2 more minor ones that I'll just mention is they are looking at refuse room and refuse chute requirements, space requirements in smaller buildings to see if they can be tweaked to unlock more, you know, habitable space within these buildings, which again makes them more financially viable to build and creates more, you know, spaces to occupy. And another area they're looking at is public hallway requirements in these buildings. And so, you know, to kind of, you know, zoom out a little bit, again, this is early stages. This task force was just launched like the end of April. And at some point we will see bills that are introduced, and you know, I think I don't think it's a done deal that these bills would pass, and so it might be something that we consider weighing in on, if there's interest in it. And there you have it. So I also on my screen used AI to generate an example of what an 8-story building that is 27 feet wide with 4,000 square feet per story square footage, what it looks like. I don't know if my screen is shareable, but I would share it if I do have that authority. But if not, you can play around and see what that looks like, and it's a significant building.
I'll give you screen sharing privileges right now so you can screen share.
All right, then I'm on the hot seat to figure out how I do that on my end. Have I been given the authority already? I don't see it prompting me anywhere. Oh,
Yeah.
here we go. Here we go. Okay, I gotcha. So there's an example. And again, if there are about 2,800 lots across the city, where they are either underdeveloped or vacant, this is a good chunk, and so, but we are on the cutting edge of this kind of policy debate, because there are, like I said, the fire department. There's actually been a couple of bills at the city council in past years in this direction. Rita Joseph from Brooklyn has sponsored them. And I looked at the testimony from the hearings on one of those bills, and the fire department, my guess, based on their comments, their testimonies, that the fire department ultimately stopped those bills. Now we have a new mayoral administration, and I do have some indication from that side that there's an openness, at least, with certain agencies to doing this. But I think still the fire department will need to get to a comfortable position. So I'll leave it at that, if that's okay, unless there are any questions.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you, Bill. Sorry, go ahead,
My pleasure.
Christine.
I just have one question, since you've been, focusing on this and reading what's been written, and thank you for bringing this to our attention. So older New York City buildings that had one stair had generally a second exterior means of egress, like fire escapes, or then later there were fire balconies where you could go to your neighbors, go from your apartment to your neighbor's apartment, break their door or whatever. That was the theory. And I don't know what the research is on that, or whether bringing any of that back is under discussion.
That is a great point. And, my mind went to the same place, when I first started getting involved here. So my role in this is, like I mentioned, I work around engineers all day and of all sorts. And so that includes fire protection engineers. And so I am engaging with fire protection engineers who are engaging with the city council. And, the question about fire escapes came up. So, we're going to do a deeper dive on that. But my understanding is the codes underwent, a complete retooling in the 1960s, which is when external fire escapes began to kind of phase out. And, again, based on like preliminary looking around, this is not the definitive guide to why fire escapes aren't being done anymore. But the philosophy about fire protection changed around that time. It used to be get the hell out of the building as fast as you can. And fire escapes were conducive to that. But the philosophy has changed to more kind of, protect yourself and shelter in place, wait for the fire department to rescue you. And so the philosophy had changed. And, some of the concerns I've read about fire escapes is that that's where fires go. They search for oxygen, they search for outdoors, and then they go up. And so, so that is a great question. And like, I live in a building that has fire escapes. It makes me feel, at least mentally, like safer. I have peace of mind. I'm like, that's how I'm getting out of here. But there is, my understanding is it's not a no-brainer. It's got to be kind of researched out.
Awesome. Thanks, Bill. Michael, you have a question?
Yeah, one thing that I've heard about in the context of this single stair stuff is that it affects the way the apartments are laid out. And stuff like the number of windows and the size of units that are feasible and so on. And I think you briefly touched on that, Bill, but I was curious if that had come up. I know the board has often expressed an interest in more family-sized units and fewer studios, and that's one thing I've heard about in the single stair conversation too. And so I'm curious if that's come up on the council side.
Definitely. That is their primary objective here, is to unlock, is a good word, I think, more, livable spaces, by the single stair, reform, and by those other ones, the refuse chutes and the hallway requirements, right? You could narrow hallway requirements, for example, and it is all about, more residential units and also bigger residential units, for sure.
Can you explain, I guess, why is that the case? How do these requirements affect the size of units or the current requirements? I don't think that's particularly obvious for people who haven't studied this. It's not obvious to me.
Yeah, that's not obvious to me either. And an architect might be a good person to answer that. And I don't know, Christine or other Tanya architects in the room, if you can do a better job answering this. But basically, as a developer, you are allowed to build a certain, space, within buildings, sellable, rentable space. There are all manner of regulations on that space, and that space. Developers have tried to game that space over the years. For example, they were doing things like putting excessively large, quote unquote, mechanical voids in buildings in order to get their residential, their penthouses at a higher elevation so they can charge more money to rent or sell them. But again, from the developer's perspective, the amount of space that they can rent or sell is regulated. I don't know if there's an architect that can explain that in a more technical way.
It's just that stairs take up a lot of space. I mean, that's what it comes down to. And if you need, each one of them is 200 square feet, and if you need two of them and it's a small lot like this, it can just, it just starts to eat up a lot of space on the floor plate, and it makes apartments harder to lay out. And that's basically what it comes down to.
One thing you said, Bill, that I thought was interesting is there has to be a hallway connecting the two stairwells. Because I don't know how often, people have been in some of these like newer buildings that get built, but they like basically like they kind of feel like hotels, where there's like this long narrow staircase or a hallway connecting two stairwells. And then I wonder if that's why like there's so few windows sometimes. It's because like you can't have, like, I live in an apartment that spans the corner of a building. It's like a super old 100-year building that obviously has one stair. But like you can't really have a corner, I guess, if there's a hallway like that has to cut the building in half.
That's right. It ends up with more apartments that just have one exposure. So you have, if you had a 2-bedroom apartment, all the 2 bedrooms and the living room would all just face one direction because you can't get across. That's the only option if you laid the building out that way. It's easier to understand with some diagrams, and maybe we can look at this more another time, but yeah.
Great. All right. Thank you, Bill. I think this is a super useful discussion for the committee to beginning, engaging in with early, indications from the council, particularly because these kinds of code, as you've been saying, they often shape housing outcomes just as much as zoning itself.
Mhm.
And I think it connects back to some prior CB2 positions that we've taken. Some that I can think of that this sort of relates to. I think it's consistent with the board's conditional support of City of Yes. I think it aligns with the idea that all neighborhoods should contribute to housing production, which we've been, arguing for in the past. And I think this is pretty different from the large LIC mega projects, what LIC kind of things that we've seen in our neighborhood, because these are scattered smaller sites. And so it sort of shifts part of the housing conversation away from large rezonings and toward whether existing zoning is actually buildable in practice under these current construction codes, which I think, we would welcome more of. So really interesting, and thanks for sharing. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for letting me. Thank
I
you.
have one other question. So on the fire issue, like, thing that I've heard about single stair and like, places that allow it, like in those places in Europe, like Germany, like they generally have a better record on like fire deaths than the US and New York. But like, do you know like what goes into that, and whether, like, I guess I'm curious like what would appease the fire department? So like what would like that's not a hindrance
The
on.
different use of materials. So depending, sadly, the materials that we used in the past were very flammable. So we have new materials now and different type of insulation. So I'm guessing when Bill says the fire department is involved, they're gonna specify a few materials, and you might be better to support me with this, specify materials that are less flammable, or that would take more than 2 hours, so then they could actually say yes to the one staircase.
Well, we kind of have sort of a similar precedent in New York City, which is scissor stairs. which are where you combine two staircases into one stair shaft. And I think that the code says when you do that is that you need to increase the fire rating of the walls in the corridor. So that when it's, instead of being 1 hour, I believe they need to be 2 hours, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, 2 hours. So it's just so that when you exit your apartment to get to that exit stair, there's more protection. If a fire has broken out in another apartment between your apartment and that stair, there's a greater level of protection in order for you to get to that stair. Whereas if you have two separate stairs, they need to be separated by a certain distance. So there's, theoretically, there's a quicker route to get from your apartment to the stair, or a more likely route that doesn't go past the fire. So then the rating of those corridor walls can be lower, which is less expensive because it's just a lower level of fire protection in those walls. So I imagine it would be something like that if, increasing the fire ratings of the corridors.
But another concern that I've heard, that the fire department has to do with their MO in a fire, which is they prefer to have two staircases so that people can come down, residents come down one stair and they can go up the other stair. And, that can really affect the time it takes for them to address the fire. So, there's considerations on all sides. But that may be an additional reason why the fire department is skeptical, it's gonna really need convincing.
Okay, let's keep it moving. The next thing I want to talk about on the agenda very quickly is revisiting the 2131 46th Avenue rezoning that we talked about in our last meeting and that we voted on as a board in the recent full board meeting. So this is the TD Bank site. So as everyone knows, the full board already adopted a recommendation approving the application with conditions. And that recommendation, it's been transmitted already to the city through the ULURP process. But I just want to brief people that we continue to see additional public comments and opposition materials coming in. So we're making them part of the public record. We're making sure that they get submitted in advance of the borough president hearing that's happening. And just to summarize the concerns, I think they're pretty similar to what we've already heard previously and what some folks talked about in the full board meeting. So the opposition mostly revolves around the proposed scale and height of the project relative to nearby lower-rise buildings. They also are concerned about excavation and construction impacts associated with the cellar parking garage. And they also question whether the environmental review assumptions and unit counts and things like that are actually accurate. So I'm glad we're seeing so much engagement, even if it is counter to our proposal. I think a lot of the people writing in live in nearby buildings, particularly in the Prime that's right next door. So, they have a vested interest and, particular concerns that they're voicing. So nice to see the engagement. But I think at this point, our role is primarily to ensure the board's adopted recommendation and conditions are accurately reflected as the application continues through public review. So that's already been uploaded. It's going through the process. And if anyone else, wants to make further comment, we're directing them to the borough president, his review that's going on now. So I just wanted to address that quickly because we have seen, a ton of emails coming in still. Any questions or comments? Lauren, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just wondering how many emails have been coming in, like opposition, and you're talking about because we had like one person speak at the full board meeting, but.
Oh, really? I missed the meeting, so I thought there would be more. But Raphael, you probably know how many emails we got. You've been forwarding them all to me and Tanya.
Around 30 emails.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
do you have an understanding of why their delay in responding, or did they not know about the hearing or?
Yeah, so Christine, you probably remember, but about a year ago, a few members of the building that live right next door to it, the Prime, came to our committee and proactively brought up this construction and wanted to be informed about when it gets to us. So about a week or two before the board meeting, I forwarded the agenda to those people who came, and I think they circulated it throughout the whole building. So it took some time for everyone to get their emails and letters together. So I think some of them missed our full board meeting, but we've encouraged them to, continue sending it into the borough president's office. So they were actually appreciative that we, remembered them even though we had a different opinion. And they thanked us for our our position and our invitation to hear them speak. But yeah, almost uniformly, all of them were against the construction, and my strong suspicion is that almost all of them live in the building next door. Cool. But yeah, nothing for us to do. Just wanted to make sure everyone was aware. And Raphael, thanks for handling all those letters that we've been getting.
Of course.
More than typical, right? Like 30 is a lot.
30 is a
That's
lot.
a lot. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, we're lucky if we get 1 or 2 on most of these. So 30 is definitely a lot.
Okay.
Cool. So next up, let's talk about some of these land use consultant exploratory conversations that we've been having. I think most of the work that's happening right now has been via Tanya and Brad, but anyone else, let me know if you have conversations as well. So I'd love for both Tanya and Brad to update the committee on the conversations they've had. So Tanya, why don't you go first?
Sure. So I spoke to Tommy DeBay. He's someone that we have not considered. He was a recommendation through Money Control. Money Control is the person from NYU, the engineering school. So Tommy Bay has like over 30 years of experience doing URLAPs. He already sent us a proposal last night. I don't know if you saw it, Prameet. And he will be needing so now he has opened his own studio, his own, and he just wants to have like an extra conversation with us and see if he can move forward. He has the team to him do it all. The other one is Manny Patel from NYU, from the engineering school. He is a professor, so while he is still finishing the year, he asked for a little extra time. He's also interested in being part of the support team. And he is more like an expert in social equity. So we did find that interesting to be part of the team, and resiliency. And the other person was, no, and that was it. I have only, and they
And then you and I.
it spoke to the same
George
George
James.
James, right?
Yeah.
And George James also said that he is very open to help us. He does, what I did like about him is he did explicitly said he understands that community boards don't have the budget. So while we figure how to allocate that budget, he is open to start working with us, and then we'll figure out through the way. He also has the team to do it and fully committed to it.
That's awesome. Thank you for having those conversations. I think where my head is at is I love all the information that we're gathering, including some of the proposals that we're getting from these folks. What I would love to do over the summer is to collate all these proposals and all the information that we've received and use it all to develop the RFP that we're eventually going to have. And I would love for us to have a goal of kicking off our RFP in the fall as soon as we're back in session after the summer. And all these people that we sort of, pick their brains on, we can, personally invite them to the RFP. And then it's also going to be public for anyone else who wants to throw their hat in the ring. And then we can, once we get all the applications, we as a committee can decide who we like best and go with them. How does that sound generally as a process?
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome.
I forgot to mention that we also spoke to BJF Planning, and they also sent a proposal.
Love it.
That's Frank Fitch, the principal. So we also have him.
Cool. Brad, you want to give us a quick update on the conversations you've had?
You want to say something? Well, I was just gonna, just say that I said it in an email already, but just repeating that I spoke to Bonnie Arkin. And she just felt that there's a conflict of interest with the work she's doing, ongoing work with the
Right.
college. She said she would reach out to us, but I haven't heard from anybody else.
That's right. Thanks for doing that, Kenny.
So I spoke with two potential consultants. One is an expediter that my office works with named Manny Russell with Greenlight Expediting. And then the other one was Carp Strategies. And they each have kind of different ability. Like I shared with them the sort of draft scope document that you created, Pramit. And they each kind of had different reactions to it, which was interesting. For Manny, as an expediter, he can't do any of the like diagramming or 3D massings that. So that was one thing he noted. He also wanted to be clear that for more complex zoning matters, we might need to use land use council, and so his recommendation was to kind of use, use him as if he were to be retained as much as possible, and then he could connect us with a land use attorney on or on an hourly basis if more complex questions came up. He said that environmental reviews would require a specialized consultant. He prefers a retainer model and would be open to rolling over unused hours from 1 month into the next. He said that in the RFP, we should be specific about the needs to attend committee meetings, like how many meetings, how often, for how long. And then he said also in RFP, we should include guidance on volume and type of work per month that is anticipated in a typical month so that they could create a retainer fee proposal. And then for Carp Strategies, they had a little bit, they were able to do any of the massing diagrams that were listed in the draft scope of work. They have not, neither of these consultants have ever done this type of work before, but both felt they're more than capable to do it. Carp is able to help to some extent with environmental reviews, as long as it doesn't get too complex and technical. They also prefer the retainer model. They asked for a budget range that is actually, within the committee's budget, so that they could know whether, before they put the effort into responding to an RFP, they would know whether it's even worth their time. And they've worked for community boards before. The principal who I spoke with previously worked for DCP and knows the process very well for ULURPs. They also suggested that in the RFP, there be language about conflicts of interest and what qualifies as a conflict of interest, so they know when they need to recuse themselves. The other thing that came up is that my office was introduced to a AI software called Zilvas, ZLVAS, and we did a demo of it, and it's incredible. And it's $200 a month. We actually just got a subscription to it, so we're going to be testing it out. The thing that we're not sure of is whether it's useful for rezoning or more for understanding the buildable potential of a lot as zoned. And so we're actually going to be talking to them about that. So I'll find out, but there might be some value. Maybe there's a way to use that and minimize the time of a consultant. And the person that one of the founders of the company does demos, so he'd be happy to do one for the committee if we're interested. It's really cool.
Question about that. Is it just purely technical, or would it actually dive into issues such as social equity?
I think it's just purely technical, yeah, but it's incredibly sophisticated at looking at different scenarios and UAP and like all the City of Yes stuff, 45X, like it somehow like can kind of take it all into consideration.
New York City based?
It's New York, I think it's only New York City.
Okay.
Yeah, but the other thing, since I haven't used it, I don't know the answer to is whether like you need like an architect or some kind of more professional level of experience to use it.
Yeah.
So I'll find out about that too.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Would be very curious to see how it goes.
Yeah, I'm happy to set up a demo with anyone from the committee if there's interest.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks, Brad, for doing all that work. I'm really excited about the number of people we've spoken to already. So I think we have a lot of proposals that we can sort of combine into the RFP that we're trying to build.
I do want to share something else about Tom DeBay and why we were, why he was our recommendation. And he is the person that wrote the article about the tale of two cities that we did through the one LIC. Mhm. Yes, so, and he also does like the study of how rezoning can affect in future years. So with you, Christine, through the one LIC process, we read that article.
How do you spell his last name?
Divane, like.
Yeah, no, but he
Yes.
works for, I thought he worked for a municipal arts
He
society.
used to, now
I
he
didn't-
has
oh, he
his
left.
own, he recently built his own practice.
Interesting. He's
So-
a very knowledgeable
Yeah,
guy.
so
Does a lot of that.
That I did actually love about him. I
Yeah.
feel like that's the biggest strength, not to only propose a rezoning, but to clearly understand how it would have played out in like 10 or 50 years.
Yeah, yeah, he has a lot of perspective. Be interesting.
Awesome. Maury, go ahead. You have a question?
No, I was just gonna give a report.
Oh, yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so I met with a colleague of mine that teaches in the same program I do at Parsons, the New School. He's also an architect, very accomplished. And we talked about, you know, if there's anything he or any of his colleagues in the architecture program or any other programs might be able to collaborate with us on. And he actually, his name is Anthony Dean, and he is the co-founder of the design technology program where I teach. But he suggested that we might want to talk to a couple of other folks, and maybe we could collaborate with them, including the transdisciplinary design program, where people could do maybe a combination of like architecture or city planning, urban design, that kind of thing. He said usually if you do it as like a class or a lab, that could work. We might want to have another discussion at some point, but that would usually require a budget. That I don't know if we have, maybe that's something we could go to the city council person to see if they could give us a discretionary budget for a project like this. Is that what we were doing when we were going to do, Christine, do you remember when we were talking to NYU about the Northern Boulevard plan? Was that going to be a discretionary budget from council person?
Well, that was gonna be mostly, I think, through their graduate program. And not necessarily, you know, I mean, we never really got much clarity about how much, you know, what would be, how much money would be required, if any, from CB2, or whether it would be research that be undertaken, you know, as part of people's, they don't use the term thesis anymore, there's a different word, right?
Capstone, right?
Capstone, right, yeah.
Yeah.
And
Maybe they could even do it as like a class, like sometimes at Parsons, they do these things called collab studios where they collaborate with an outside group. So maybe I can just keep shopping this around.
But the main thing about that seemed to be that we have to, it can't be something that comes up and then we want an answer, you know, next month, or for a capstone project, the person doing it has to, you know, plan it like a semester ahead. We sort of have to be several months out.
Do we know, do we have an idea of what like our priorities would be for something? Would it be like the Northern Boulevard corridor redesign, or is it something else we want to do, like streetscaping? Or
I think we'd have to have a committee discussion about that, and maybe even a board discussion. I mean, we've discussed things in the past, but you know, and something, so I think it's preliminary to answer that. But I mean, I think, you know, Northern Boulevard is a big topic and an important one in the district.
Yeah, I agree.
Great, thanks for those conversations. Yeah, sorry, Tanya, go ahead.
Now that you mentioned a budget for this school, Manny Patel from NYU said that he would try to get us pro bono, and that the idea was like to do through studio classes. If he couldn't do it through his own, he will try to find someone, a professor that would take that challenge and help us through.
Right.
Michael, you had your hand up?
Oh yeah, I was just I think this has come up in some previous conversations as well. I think there's sort of a bundle of needs that probably have different timelines and budget pressures. So there's like this, how do we efficiently and effectively manage ULURP applications where it's like we'd probably want a professional in the space who can respond quickly, but then there are all these like longer term projects where like students or researchers on a more extended timeline might be more aligned. And so I wonder if it might be helpful to just brainstorm some of those use cases so that as we kind of engage with these academic folks, we can have a menu of options that are interested in the committee. Like one thing I've heard from just somebody I know who lives in the community is like housing on top of libraries is like something that some boards have done, like some communities in New York City have done affordable housing on top of existing public libraries. And like, is that an opportunity in our space? Like, so, I mean, I'm sure that we could all collect a bunch of use cases that are not at all time sensitive or tied to specific applications, but could benefit from some sustained thinking. And then maybe that could enrich those conversations with academic folks. And then there's the third piece, which is the Roosevelt Avenue, Northern Boulevard stuff, which I personally don't want to put into this bucket of long-term future work with academics, just given that the board is engaged on this issue for years. It's been on our budget for years, like our statement of needs. The council member has, commissioned and paid for a study of land use in that area already, and that study has been released. And so I wouldn't want to put that in the bucket of sort of exploratory long-term, because I feel like it really ought to be more mature than that. And I know that that's also kind of noted later in the agenda, so we can talk more about it.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a really good summary, Michael. Appreciate it. Cool. All right, great work, folks. Again, I think the next step here is going to be I'll reach out to the people who've had these conversations, and I think most of the applications that these people have or proposals people have put together are already in my inbox, but I just want to make sure I have all of them. And once I do, I'll start collating them all to see what they have in common or what they have in terms of unique capabilities and figure all that out. Cool. Let's keep it going to some of the other organizational items that we've talked about in the past, and I'll just see if there's any updates or if we should just keep it on the agenda for next time. Kenny, you we're going to talk to the Civic Engagement Commission. I think you gave us this update already, but is there anything else you want to add related to that?
No, nothing for that, just we're plunging away.
Sounds good. Michael and Raphael, anything on digitization of land use records? Actually, I think Nick, you got involved in this too, right? So do you have an update on some of the work that you've been doing?
I did. I researched a number of grants that treat our records both as like a government entity and something that's worth historically preserving, with sort of two separate buckets of money. I have reached out to the Wagner archives on the latter, and I worked with them to digitize the archives of the Ridgewood Democratic Club when I was a district leader, and they've done really great work. And then on the sort of more governmental stuff, we're past the point in the fiscal year to take care of most of the state programs. There is quite a lot of state money available, especially to help with land use boards like ours. And so once budgets are done, I'm going to reach out to the local electeds and see if there's maybe late application or if we should get started on another one. But we're talking on the order of hundreds of thousands of dollars on that for digitization assistance, and in many cases they just hire somebody and do it for you. Like, so anyway, updates to come on that stuff, but there is money available on both. I actually thought for the historical piece of the whole thing, the fact that we were the basis for this big fight on Amazon is potentially a great like a pitch to it for like historical records of preservation for what our board has done. And so anyway, there's a couple of different things that I'm being creative.
That's awesome. Yeah, thanks for looking into that. I'm excited about what you find and what we can get going here. All right, the next sorry, go ahead.
Just to very briefly, so I raised this at the executive committee meeting last month, and our sort of perspective on the near-term feasibility of office staff doing it is just that, like, we don't have the people right now, just given the current staffing in the office to make meaningful progress on sorting out the records, but it's like something to keep in mind as we get to full capacity. And if there is grant money, to Nick's point, that could, assist, that would obviously be helpful.
Yeah, that would be great. So we don't have to pay for it ourselves. So let's see what we can make happen there. All right, a couple of action items that I had that I have not done yet, but are still on my to-do list. I had mentioned that when I was head of land use for CB6, I put together a standard developer questionnaire. So I need to resurface that to this group and see what from that we can borrow for our needs. So we don't have to ask these developers the same questions live every time. They could just fill out this questionnaire and we'll have it in advance of our meeting. So I will definitely dig that up and circulate with the group. And then I was also supposed to follow up with the HPD contact on if there's been any updates on the Hunters Point South parcel. So I will do that as well. Maury sent to us the old land use sort of values framework from a few years ago. So we have that in our inbox. Raphael, you and I, actually, Raphael, I think your work here is done now that we have the document since Maury found it. So I need to go in and see if we can use that to update and create a land use values framework. If anyone feels strongly about that and wants to help, let me know, and we can work on it together. But you can just email me if you're interested. And then, Michael, you and I still need to go through the statement of needs and respond to some of the city agencies. So again, we'll do some of this.
Yeah, I was just looking at
go
this one, and it actually the DCP stuff says that the Queen's office will reach out to us. I wonder though whether we should. I mean, we are very familiar with the Queensboro DCP office, so it doesn't seem like it's a very difficult thing for us to just explicitly is this.
Yeah, we probably should just send Fagala an email and say, hey, what are the updates on all these things?
Yeah, and like how can, because their language actually says they will reach out to us to understand how they can incorporate the community, the board's perspective into their planning work in our borough or whatever. And so I think we might just ask, what can we provide you? Respect to Northern Boulevard or Roosevelt Avenue or these other requests where they wrote sort of support but cannot accommodate type answers.
Yeah, totally. Awesome. Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, my daughter's surgery is going to be late June, so I would imagine that in July I'll have some more work or some more time to work on this stuff. So definitely we'll make progress over the summer. And then the last category that we had was, some people here felt strongly about certain policy work streams. So if you're still interested, would love for you to draft these letters that we can send out. So Maury, you were going to do something around rent stabilization. Kenny, you were going to do small business displacement. Maury and Michael, you were going to do something related to tenants. And I honestly forget what DHCR is, but you probably know better than I do. And Danielle, you were going to do... Gotcha. Yep. And Danielle, you were going to do grocery access. So if you still feel strongly about any of these, feel free to draft the letters, send them over, and this committee can review and potentially, give you the thumbs up to send out the letter. I see a hand.
It's Nick.
Who was that? Go ahead. Yep. Go ahead, Nick.
So I just wanted to flag that the city housing city FEPS vouchers are up for discussion at the moment. And so I don't know that this directly fits into any of these things, and the timeline that this needs is much faster than sort of the idea that folks write a letter and we consider it next time. Basically, this is a fighting homelessness and eviction protection housing voucher, and they passed a really big, robust program in 2023, and then Mayor Eric Adams sued the council, sued the city, decided not to do it. Mamdani ran saying he would stop the lawsuit and has not, and so there's a lot of advocacy that's gone on in the last maybe 2 months about this to try to get the mayor to about face. It's a very expensive program, but anyway, that's happening right now. And so if there are a variety of organizations like Women in Need that are spearheading advocacy around this, if it is something folks are interested in us signing on to, there are quick ways to do that. But I don't know what the procedure would be to do that for the next couple meetings, given that it would have to happen quickly.
Yeah, I don't know how quick we can do it, but if you think that this is something that could wait 1 month, what I would encourage you to do is email this group all the information related to it. We can get up to speed, and then we can have a vote in our June land use meeting if we want to sign on or not. But if you think that this is going to move much more quickly than that, I don't know if it's quite appropriate for our committee.
When we look at what the budget delay means, because it is possible that negotiations about this can happen in the interim, but I just don't know how fast. But I presume there's probably a little bit of time.
Yep. And then if there is time, and we do want to do a letter, would love for you to take the lead to draft the letter so we have something to respond to in our next meeting.
Definitely.
Great. Danielle, go ahead.
So there are various hearings. The last one was during our full board meeting for the stabilized apartment rent increase, or hopefully lack thereof. There is some advocacy happening to actually have a decrease. Is there any, if there is any interest in us having an opinion, writing a letter on that, I'm happy to take that on. I don't know, I live in rent stabilized, but I have no idea how many other apartments in the community board district are rent stabilized. But it might be something of interest.
Can you give a 10-second overview of what this is?
So basically, rent stabilized apartments go through the rent guideline board to get an increase that they can do every year. And so in the last several years, when it was the other mayor, it went up about 3%. Your rent would go up if you were in stabilized about 3% every year. So the current mayor ran on freezing rent. So when he was saying freezing rent, he meant on stabilized apartments, and that meant no increase. So it would be a zero increase. But our council member and several other advocates have actually asked for it, which probably will not happen, a 12% decrease.
12%.
Well, to take back the 4 years of 3% increases that Adams made or got through. I think there is a possibility that there could be maybe a 2% decrease, but I definitely think it will get frozen. And I do think that's a positive for those of us who live in rent stabilized buildings. But I wonder if we want to have an opinion, because we are a board that does.
I have not heard about this 12% decrease proposal. That's new and surprising. Would love to learn more about it.
I was shocked, but I don't really think that will happen. I mean, that's a huge.
Yeah, it seems pretty far-fetched.
Like $400, $500 a month. It's like crazy.
And
But
they took a vote already on the initial projected ranges, and I think they were mostly 0 to 2% was the 1 year.
Yeah, that's what I've seen as well.
But it was preliminary, and my point is, if we want to advocate for this, for the people in this district, this is the time. We have I think it's probably 2 more months.
Yeah, Danielle, I think I'm going to tell you the same thing that I just told Nick. You should draft something that you want us to sign on to, email it out to this group so we can review in advance. And then in our June meeting, we can have a vote on whether we want to sign on or not.
Yep.
And just so you know, in terms of the rent guidelines board schedule, so they're having public hearings now in terms for people to weigh in on this. The Queens one is actually, it conflicts with our full board meeting. Unfortunately, it's that same Thursday. And then the final vote is going to come later in the month, I think June 26th or so. So, but that's where things stand. And like Danielle, I also live in rent regulated housing.
Yeah. And you can go to another borough though and testify.
You can and testify. So, for people to tell their stories.
This start tomorrow. So
yeah.
Awesome. Would really encourage you to do that if that's something you feel strongly about, and I would love to learn more. Cool. That's all the agenda items that I had. Is there anything else on people's mind before we break?
Sorry.
Let's go Danielle first and then Michael.
I believe that the first meeting of the One LIC commission is on the same night as our June meeting.
It is.
I'm really struggling with this because I feel like our council member who used to be on this board should know that and try to find a different night. But is there any thought, and I don't want to throw a wrench into everything, but is there any thought about convening this meeting wherever, I think it's at Cooney there, or making this meeting on another night so that members of this committee that had a role in that can attend that?
Yeah, I know it's tough.
Either rescheduling our meeting, because I don't think we're gonna get that meeting rescheduled, or convening there an hour early, which I think is really difficult for anybody who works till 5 or 6.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really tough just because we do have these developers who are potentially going to come to our meeting already anyway. And I think it would be a lot to ask them to reschedule. I think some of you know I'm actually chair of one of the committees for this One LIC Oversight Committee, and I'm unfortunately going to have to miss the meeting. I'm going to, do our meeting instead.
Right.
But we do have other members on CB2 that are part of the oversight committee, so I'm hoping that we can just get a readout from them on what happened. So Danielle, follow your heart on which one you want to go to, but I think unfortunately there will be a conflict.
Maybe we can express for the future to be considerate of the committee that spent a lot of time working on this, and for those of us who actually live in Long Island City.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
For me,
Mike,
how many CB2 members are on the oversight committee?
There are quite a few. I'd say probably like 4 or 5. And I'm forgetting everyone who's on it, but it's definitely at least me, Anatole, Carisha, and I think a couple more, but I'm forgetting.
Yeah, it's me too, and Corey Hannigan.
Okay.
There you go. Awesome.
I guess small things on the land use consultant piece. I mentioned at the last full board meeting that we've had some meetings with the borough president's office and budget folks on their side. And I think especially given this sort of staff transitions that are happening in our community board office right now, I'll try to work with them to get some idea of how much we might be able to allocate for a land use consultant next year. I think generally we're going to need a lot of support from the borough president's office on having a budget for next year, just given that there's a vacancy in the DM's position right now. But I will try my best to kind of at least have ballparks to bring back to the board or to this committee next month to help anchor the discussion around an RFP. And then, to the conversation with Maury, Maury, I'm also just going to text you this, but I wonder if we can write a letter about illegal destabilization of rent stabilized apartments, since that's been a big Sunnyside. The Attorney General's office is working on it, but these things shouldn't have been happening for years, and then years later the Attorney General goes after them. We should have some proactive measurement on this. So I would love to work with you on that.
Yeah, so maybe me, you, and Lauren can work on this together.
All
right, that's awesome.
Cool.
Awesome. Hey, I'm seeing something in the chat. Yeah, I'm seeing something in the chat from a community member, Lindsay, asking about 5002 Queens Boulevard. So, Lindsay, you probably already know most of this, but I'm going to put in the zoning application portal link here that gives more details on what's happening with that rezoning. But the update that we have so far is that for 5002 Queens Boulevard, the Department of City Planning said that the certification is going to occur in early June. And what that means is that once it's certified, that's when it's going to come before our committee. So we'll have the developer come before us. We can ask questions. We can find out more details about what's happening and make our recommendation at that meeting. So we have a June meeting on when is it? June 17th. So that's
I'm sorry,
likely.
this is for Skillman Avenue.
Oh, sorry. Did I misread what you wrote?
Yeah, that's all right. Sorry.
Oh,
Thank
Skillman.
you for...
Oh, there's 2 5002s. Okay. I was talking 5002 Queens Boulevard.
I believe that one's an as of right rebuild.
I don't think, are they putting in a ULIP application on Skillman?
I don't think so.
Yeah, I have not heard anything about Skillman. Lindsay, why don't you send us an email about what you know, and we can reach out to the Department of City Planning and get more details on what's happening.
That'd be great. I spoke to Julie Wan. She told me to come here tonight, so.
For sure. Oh, yeah.
Gotcha.
We did.
Gotcha. Yeah, we just haven't heard anything through any official channels or about it. So we definitely can look into it. But if you would just send us what you know so far, that'll
That would
help.
be great. Is there an email that I can?
Yes. Let me
Is
put
best?
my email address in the chat.
I believe it's an as of right, because it's only 7 stories and it's in keeping with the zoning. Is that right?
Gotcha. Yeah, we can find out for sure. But that
I appreciate
might
it.
be
Thank you. As I'm the one who lives right behind it.
Yep, for sure. Cool. Any other thoughts? If not, thank you, everyone. Really appreciate all the hard work that members have been putting in, especially related to, the broader effort around consultants and all the conversations you've had. And looking forward to seeing you all next month. So we'll adjourn now. I'll make the motion. Any seconder?
Second.
Maury. All right. Thanks, everyone. Chat soon. Take
Have
care.
a good night, everyone.
You.